spaces around this table today. I'm going to call us to order in service to moving our agenda forward. I know we have some folks that need to step away a little before the meeting adjourns. We'll turn to Clerk Byrd for a roll call.
Sure. The good news is, based on the numbers in the room, we have a quorum today. So I'm going to call roll very quickly. Chair Grimes.
Present.
Mayor Blackwell indicated she'll be a little late. Ronnie Cannon.
Present.
Reverend Chalker.
Present.
LaRon Clayton.
Present.
Colleen is excused. Janice Contreras is not here yet. Dr. Heidi Gullett is parking. Dr. Charles Modlin.
Present.
Malak Rashid.
Present.
Levine is no longer with us. That's an error I have on the agenda. Apologies. But Councilwoman Conwell is not here. Glenn Shoemake.
Present.
Ella Sims is not here. Eddie Taylor and Sheila Wright.
Present.
So excited we have a quorum so we can vote on some stuff today.
Well, thank you. With that, I will turn to you for our moment of silence and reflection.
So again, good afternoon. I hope you each had a blessed Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the time when we gather with family and friends to celebrate our blessings, to consider and to pray for those less fortunate, and to express our gratitude for the people both past and present in our lives. November has ended and Thanksgiving is over. But when we count our blessings, we must remember that our reality is not the reality of so many people. We must continue to remember the disparities and the hardships suffered by so many of our brothers and sisters. James Baldwin wrote, quote, "It is certain in any case that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have," close quote. The cruel and oftentimes overt and covert actions coming from the highest government offices prove Baldwin right. Where is our justice? These are frightening times. We see it with the actions of masked and armed ICE agents when they scoop up and imprison our own and Black men and women and their children who have lived and worked in this country for decades. We see it with the proposed changes to the Affordable Care Act that will eliminate necessary access to health care for hundreds of thousands of people. We see it with the diminished affordability of housing and the rising cost of groceries. We see it with geographic redistricting to redefine political boundaries, thus disenfranchising masses of people. It is December now, and for many, this is the season of Advent. It is a time to recommit. There is no question that these are polarizing, painful, and frightening times. But Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, said, quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world." Case, let's make December our time to recommit to our collective quest and purpose. Case can make changes by focusing on specific actions that will contribute to bigger solutions. The work of the Case is the most powerful tool at our disposal for our citizens. We can and will ponder solutions and propose practices and policies that will address justice and equity for all. We can be that small, thoughtful group of committed citizens, and we can change outcomes of our community. Case, the county executive, county council, and I all thank you for your continued commitment, to equity of opportunity and a more just community for all of the citizens in our county and beyond. So I thank you.
If we could just take a moment to reflect on Clerk Byrd's words and
Can we all say amen?
Thank you, Reverend.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Clerk Byrd, do we have any public comments?
We have not received any public comments submitted via our email to equity@cuyahogacounty.gov, and today's in-person meeting, as you know, is open to the public, and there is no one for public comment unless my friend in the background and former colleague is saying no. As we all know, most of us know Laura Black.
All right. Thank you for being here, Ms. Black, and thank you. Clerk Byrd.
Sorry, I apologize. In the reflection, I wanted to see if I could just make a brief comment, just out of a desire to make sure wanted to share what I was thinking about in my reflection, which is to give a very special note and recognition to our Afghan and Somali American community members here in Cuyahoga County. We have a really robust, wonderful Afghan and Somali American community, and with all the things that have been happening the past 2 weeks, I your comments just made me think specifically of them and those like them. So, and I just wanted to make sure, because we have really great community members here from both those communities.
Thank you, Member Rashida. All right. Well, welcome. Chief of Staff Janice is here alongside Senior Advisor, Executive Advisor Serena Roberts.
Senior Executive Special.
Senior. Well, thank you both for being here. Mr. Janice, I'll turn to you for your
Sure.
comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you again. I don't have a whole lot in the way of updates, but happy to have a conversation should you want to with me. I will say that I think I've updated this group a couple of different times over the last several months about our ongoing work within the executive branch, specifically with the law department, to ensure that we remain compliant with lawful DEI practices, which I know is important to this group and the work that we do. We continue to work through that as we try to make sense of and understand the various edicts that come down from the federal government. I don't have anything new to report on that today. However, I suspect I may have more to discuss with you and report with you early in the next year as we contemplate understanding what we need to do in order to continue to do our work in a reasonable, lawful way while still sharing the goals that we all share in terms of trying to address equity and inclusion issues. So no long comments today, but happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Do you have any distinction, or is there any way you can get clarity of the distinction between what the administration considers DEI versus health equity? Because those are two different entities. And there's been instances where health equity work, health disparity work has actually been stalled or eliminated. So I've never seen any official notification. I mean, what specifically is DEI and where does it leave off? Because health equity is evidence-based medicine, the practice of evidence-based medicine.
Yeah, and Laurel Diaz, our Chief Health and Equity Officer, is here, and she could talk a little bit about the focus of our administration from a health equity standpoint. Really, what I'm talking about is more specifically DEI and DEI programs. As many in this group are aware, we've talked about it at this table before. There have been various changes from the federal government as it relates to executive orders and other things that impact the work that we do or may impact the work that we do at the county level. And so really our focus has been to ensure that we continue to operate within the bounds of the law as it relates to the work we can do. So when I'm talking about DEI, I'm specifically focused on our equity-related programs. As it relates to health equity specifically, Laurel, do you have anything you might want to add?
I would just say that I don't think that our administration's stance on that has changed at all. We are, continuing to work towards access for all individuals. We have our Women's Health Commission that's very focused on the women's health access and equity work. Everything that we do at HHS, and I would even kick it over to Sabrina on that work as well, is focused on making sure that people have access through, making sure that they have insurance. So we are going to continue to have a strong focus on Medicaid access and making sure that we can do as much as possible to keep people insured. And then all of the tentacles that kind of reach out from that in terms of working with our hospital partners, our FQHCs and other behavioral health entities and substance use disorder entities to continue to push the direction that we've always, pushed and supported.
I just think there needs to be, I can say firsthand, I know hospitals have actually abandoned a lot of their quote-unquote health equity work. And even naming of programs so that the community will know those programs are specifically for those populations at greater risk. So I don't know if the county or the administration has actually pushed back to advocate to, continue a lot of the work that needs to be done. Or are we just, passively, assuming that there's certain programming that has to be discontinued? So it's a complicated question.
So I don't know, Sabrina,
Yeah.
if you want to add anything, but
I don't want to add anything. I do have some comments. I don't know if it's going to specifically answer your questions, but I will say, put a pin in your question. We're working on it. But what I would say when I was reflecting on what Nayla, with Clerk Bird, opened up with, the word that struck me was opportunity. No matter what the law is, and we can adjust to laws because we're lawful people. I think the key is opportunity. And as I see what is going on in the Romaine administration right now is very much trying to be more resident-centered. And when I say resident-centered, reducing barriers and a broader approach to outreach. And that is spanning everywhere from our fiscal area under Chief Gallagher, with the Treasurer's Department, with fiscal, with Great Estates, really helping people unpack how they leave their assets to their beneficiaries. That hadn't happened before this administration. That has been a huge take up from south to east to west, people understanding that piece. And part of this is the unknown, right? Breaking down those barriers to make sure people are able to keep what they already have and then learn new things, the educational piece about how to structure their estate. When I think about the treasurer standing up more programs on how to retain their home, so they don't lose it. Just really, again, fanning out throughout the county, being resident-centered and reducing barriers. I think about our small business program where we're creating opportunities for small businesses and people to create wealth for their families. I think about, Ms. Diaz, Damaski Diaz mentioned Medicaid and SNAP. We had a huge issue with the shutdown, but beyond that issue of the shutdown are the changes that it's law right now. And there's a gap in knowledge and how we've come together with philanthropy and other key nonprofits to make plain language and fan out across the county to really instruct and educate people on how to keep their benefits. So all that to say, and there's a lot more. Focusing on what matters, people. What do they need? What education do they need for the services that we have here to make sure they get that in a way that we fan out and we make sure we hit every part of this county, that people know we value everyone here. And I know it'll be going down a little bit in a nuance, what you're talking about with screenings. And at the end of the day, I think, and I don't know specifically for each item you're talking about, but it behooves us across the county, if there's a low take-up rate on a screening, we just go make sure those folks, just like on the east or west, can make sure they get their screening. So we're focusing on just doing the work. However, we may need to adjust, we will. But keeping community center of all of it. So that was a long way around, but
Thank you.
we're doing a lot.
And I think you'll hear when we ask Laurel and Nicole to brief us a little bit more on where we are with our Central Services campus planning, you'll hear that we're viewing that through a health equity lens as well. I'm sure Laurel will talk about that.
So I'll go to your question, your comments specifically, and it's a corollary to Dr. Mountain's conversation. We recognize the federal government has become a multi-headed monster, right? And it's not just the language around these things and what you can and can't say. There are funding issues, right, along with it. The county has its own challenges, right? The property tax collections, what's happening at the state level, some changes. So specifically then to this work, right, with all those challenges, and we have empathy for it because we recognize where we are from a funding standpoint, some things have to be lessened or stopped, right, when you have these fiscal challenges and you have to have responsibility associated with them. So the question specifically then is, what will be lessened, right? Where will things have to take, maybe even just in the short term, a little bit of a hit related to this work in particular?
I appreciate the question, and we're going to hear from Walter Perfiowicz, who just walked in a little bit later, in terms of a general overview of where we are from a county budget standpoint. We have, when you're in this time of fiscal challenge, whether it's resources or uncertainty at the federal or state level, oftentimes you have to sort of really focus on what the core functions of what you do are. In the county, that's safety and justice, and that's human services. We feel like, from our perspective, the work in those two large spaces touches the DEI work, the health equity work, and the work that this commission is concerned about so much that I don't know that I'd characterize it as we've got to pull back. We've just got to be smarter. And what I mean by that is we need a lot of the money, for instance, that flows to our community through the county from a health and human service standpoint are federal and state dollars. What we do need to do is make sure that we preserve and protect the dollars coming into our community in order to achieve the goals of helping the least among us in this community and simultaneously care about the things that this commission cares about. So that may not be a change in terms of reduction of resources, but rather ensuring that our programs are tweaked to ensure those dollars still come while we're still trying to accomplish the goals of this committee. So for me, it's less about, if the question is, are we going to pull back on investments that are important to this committee or to the executive from a DEI standpoint, I don't immediately see that. It's more about how are we restructuring our work and doing our programs, doing the work that we do that allows us to continue to get those dollars to help the people that we most want to help. So the reframing is less about disinvestment in dollars and more about tweaking or adjusting programs in order to ensure that they continue.
Any other questions for Mr. Janis?
So, and I appreciate comments from county staff, and I think we're all most of us trying to get to the same place of how we improve equity. And so, I can't call you Chief Executive Roberts, but I forget what all the acronyms that Chair Grimes gave you, but the opportunity moment, right? Or, I think that's important, right? And I think that looking in from that lens, I think extends much of what we would want to achieve and accomplish, and then just following the law as it exists, so enforcing discrimination, civil rights, and the things that we can do in a much more pronounced or active way, I think will also be important or significant as we can, deal with threading the needle.
And I think, Mr. Shumate, Commission Member Shumate, one thing that I think has been consistent, no matter what you call it, one thing that I like about this administration, love about the administration, really picking apart what we do day to day to make sure we're not the barrier. I remember Mr. Johnson from Small Business, he said he started looking inward, like, where is it that we might be creating a barrier for folks to get, small business TA, technical assistance, and other assistance. So I think when we talk about opportunity, there's an opportunity continuously for us as the government entity to look at everything we do to make sure we're not, yes, we have a program, but it's hard to get in, or you don't know about it. Basic things like you don't know about it. So we're trying very, very hard to step back, look at what we have, and say, how does anyone in this county, because we want people to have opportunity, we want people to utilize the resources that are, funded by taxpayers. So,
And so just follow up to that, but Chair Grimes, the whole point of conversation we had about how does this group share more positive news? Because it can be encouraging with everything coming at us, right? But not enough to grasp and hold on to, and not just for those who are in the know, who know what's going on, but there's whatever, 1.2 million in the county who may not know what's going on, and may not know about opportunities. So our ability to double down on the outward message would be helpful also.
and something that's promising, and I'll close here, that I see that we didn't do maybe 10, 15 years ago. It's like everything that's old comes back to new again. That whole hub model, we have it at the food bank, where it's one-stop shop. You can get a lot of different help in a lot of different areas at the food bank. That was a lot of food banks from all over the country come and see our food bank. When I think about the project that's starting on East 22nd, where the crisis center will be, the Goodwill has said they're going to put a stake in the ground there, and they have a hub model, I believe it's in Canton, that they want to bring here. The more things we do like that, where folks can go one place and get all the services they need, I see that as very beneficial to folks, so they don't have to run around and exhaust, their time, energy, and money to get help.
And if I may, Glenn, I appreciate your message about assisting and communicating positively what we're doing. I'm going to take you all up on that. I think as we move into 2026, we're going to need your guys' help in continuing to pass the message out to the community and all we're trying to do in this sort of difficult time. So I appreciate the point, and do a lot of thinking about it and make sure that we take you up on it, because just like you are a reflection to the county of the community's voice and priorities, we've got to do a better job. And I think you and I have even talked about this a little bit. We've got to do a better job of using you to help us communicate to the community what we're doing. So if it's okay, actually, Glenn, I'll follow up with you on that.
My one hope and prayer in this and ask of the executive and the team working on these efforts is that we don't lose sight of the existing disparities as metrics are determined, as targets are determined. What I witness in this moment is there are real lives in the balance who are day-to-day impacted by the ongoing impacts of racism. Their health is undermined, and there is a perceived, at least, turning away from that suffering in an effort to sustain the resources of the federal and state government. And there is no programming without resources. However, if we are not very intentional in discerning what's essential to the most marginalized people and beneficial to all, and articulating that, being clear about that, implementing those strategies, and then measuring impact on those most marginalized people, I worry we'll be patting ourselves on the back for successes that aren't really impacting the day-to-day lives of the people most harmed by structural racism. And so that would be, I'm sure, a shared concern
Appreciate that.
in this moment, and we hope that that is a consideration in terms of measurement of impact and decision-making around what policies and what tactics and strategies will be implemented.
What about, I don't know how you would assess it, and I'm very supportive of what you're saying about focusing on how to do what we do. But what are you seeing, for instance, like the Diversity Center of Greater Cleveland or East Ohio? we're seeing a complete pullback from school districts that are frightened about promoting equity, doing programs that help it, a complete pullback of funding and opportunity. And are you seeing that with all the partnerships in our community? What's happening in the business community? Are you seeing a pullback from people who say, we now have an excuse? I'm not saying it out loud. We have an excuse not to fund this anymore, and we can just go a different track.
I think, Reverend, that's a really legitimate concern. I don't, from where I sit, I don't think I can opine about how externally people are handling this. We read it in the newspaper, for better or worse, almost every week about what people are doing or no longer doing and why. All I can say is we have chosen not to react in sort of a knee-jerk fashion one way or another, but have been really intentional over the last couple months to make sure we work with our law department to understand what we're doing and how we can do it lawfully. So I'm sure there's a level of disappointment from many around this table of what we're seeing from other governments or other universities or the private sector. But we're not taking that approach. We're taking a very, very intentional approach, and that's really all I can focus on. I understand where you're coming from, though, and that's why we've decided we're not going to leap and do this or leap and not do that. We're going to take our time to figure out how to do things correctly. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right. Well, with that, I'll share an update in a few words. By way of update, I want to offer some words of gratitude to Member Shumate, who has been essential in us bringing together right now about 30 community members for focus groups that are informing the survey on the impacts of racism on community members, our residents, that CSU will put forward in the coming year as we round out our last focus group. So I just want to thank Member Shumate for your diligence and ongoing commitment to helping keep that effort on track in the midst of what are very heavy and distracting and distressing times. I want to thank Ms. Julia Garber for your support, and as well as Clerk Bird, who will be standing in for me this week for a community survey. I won't steal too much of the thunder of that update on the community survey, but I do want to express my gratitude. And finally, Mr. Cannon, Member Cannon, towards employment. The use of the space has been amazing. It's a beautiful space and really met the needs of this process. And we've had some lovely dinners there from local restaurants of culture, as I like to say. And so we are moving along in a way that is only possible through the kind of shared commitment and diligent effort of the communications subcommittee, chairs of our subcommittees, and the team here at the county. And it's no small effort, and it can feel like, is this the right work in a moment where so many people are suffering? And what the focus group members are conveying to us, that this is necessary and important work. So I want to express my gratitude. And then the use of the word opportunity really beautifully tees up the other part of the comments that I wanted to make, which is around this moment of crisis as an opportunity. And I believe there's a Mandarin character that essentially combines crisis and opportunity that we used a lot in the work that I did at PEP. To Member Shumate's point, the elevation of sustained effort, impactful effort around equity and racial equity is something that I'm going to make a call to action to members to help us begin to surface. The communications subcommittees had a couple conversations around how do we become a conduit as a body for surfacing those stories of sustained and committed effort and impactful effort. I welcome the opportunity to help amplify the county's successes. And I will offer that we, as members of this body, likely have some stories that we can share that can help us be more targeted in the policy recommendations and the practices and the strategies of the county through our conversations and the work that's happening by members of this body. So, call to action, let's begin to lift up what we're seeing and hearing around sustained effort and impact around equitable practices, equitable programs that are staying the course and being impactful. I will share by way of just a story that may be useful to think about around youth. Our community clearly has suffered some very serious and catastrophic incidents involving young people, and those have weighed very heavily on my heart. And as I shared the heaviness on my heart around those concerns, there has been a community ready to go, activated and engaged around how we respond to harm from young people in ways that allow them to sustain their dignity, their humanity, and be restored, be healed, be helped, be supported in the face of harm that they've caused, and ensure that young people who are harmed, individuals in our community who are harmed, also get access to the healing and support that they need. If we can find ways to ensure that our engagement of young people is healing-centered, that is essential to Black and brown young people who are often dehumanized, often criminalized, often pathologized, and pushed away by not only the criminal justice system, but our own community. So if we can create conversations and spaces where we continue to humanize our young people, that benefits everybody. And so in that spirit, there is a community gathering that is happening this evening, hosted by the Youth Justice Collaborative. Myself and several other folks will be sitting on a panel to discuss child development, what it looks like, what happens and what can contribute to young people causing harm, and how we might respond in more restorative ways. And it's meant for community to be there so that we, as community members and residents, demand the care and concern and compassion that we want to see from our justice system. And then we also will be talking about what it takes to heal in the aftermath of harm, especially for young people, so that we ensure that we are demanding of our systems practices that are responsive to culture, responsive to trauma, responsive to historical factors when folks get, when there's harm and young people need healing, when families need healing. Tuesday, there's a woman by the name of LJM, who is an artist in our community, activist and organizer, who has been bringing together community members in Collinwood. So I'll be there in that conversation, again, around getting the message to the people who most need it, community members. And so I will yield my comments there, but just invite you, as you are in your spaces and disciplines and sectors, let's start to elevate those practices and those strategies that are most impactful for marginalized folks and beneficial to everyone, so that we can help share those ideas with the county leadership. Any questions for me? Comments for me? Well, with that, we will move into the voting portion of our agenda. Excitedly, because the stuff has been waiting.
Yay. Okay, let's start with the approval of the minutes. The minutes from our August 28th, 2025, as well as our, those were distributed on September 8th via email for your review. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion?
Thank you. Motion made by Member Rashid. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Shu made second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the minutes are accepted. Now for the exciting part. You want to move on?
Yes, please.
All right, the approval of the virtual meeting policy. We finally have a quorum, so we can get to this. As a reminder, House Bill 257 of the 135th session of the Ohio General Assembly became effective on April 9th of 2025. Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.221 permits members of public bodies to attend meetings or hearings virtually when the public body has adopted certain policies, including methods by which members of the public may observe and attend meetings and hearings. In conjunction with our own county law department, Case Communications Subcommittee approved a virtual meeting policy, which will now be brought forth to this committee for a vote. Members received a copy of the virtual meeting policy via email on both Thursday, August 21st, 2025, Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, and did they receive it? And December 3rd of 2025. Are there any questions about that policy, just to refresh you all? Okay, is there a motion to adopt that policy?
Motion?
Thank you, Member Sheet. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Cannon. Is there any conversation or discussion about that policy? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the virtual meeting policy is adopted. However, there must be changes to our bylaws that are required to include this policy. The changes to the bylaws can be accepted in one all-encompassing vote. A hard copy of those amendments to our bylaws has been provided to you for your review during and prior to this meeting. Is there a motion to accept the changes to the bylaw?
Move.
Thank you, Reverend Chalker. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Rashid, thank you. Is there any discussion about these amendments to our bylaws? Okay, hearing no discussion, all those in favor of adopting, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries and the changes to the bylaws are accepted. I'm sure you will all be excited for our next meeting to get, right, the glitter, right, like a baby reveal party, right? Like just yay. Okay, we are happy to be joined, may I move on? I'm
Please.
Sorry. Okay, as some of you know, county council, the county executive and his team have recently gone through budget hearings to adopt our budget. And to that end, we were all there making budget recommendations, et cetera. But we have been joined today by one of my friends and colleagues who, gosh, I've been with you since I started here, right? In the new form of government. Still can't pronounce his last name though.
Right.
So
Okay.
Parfialis.
Parfialowitz,
Is that close?
Yep,
Okay.
Walter Parfialowitz, I'm the budget director for Cuyahoga
Wait,
County.
Walter, excuse me.
Yeah.
I have that in my notes.
You're jumping ahead.
Please proceed.
Walter Parfialis, or Walter P, as we otherwise call him around here, who is the director of the Office of Budget Management for the county. And I am sure Chief Janice will agree with me, does an exceptional job, along with his and his department, specifically Shantae, who works hand and side by him, I'm sure, in preparing us, keeping us on track, keeping us with the budget. And he's going to provide just a brief overview for all of us so we know what's happening with the budget. So,
If I may,
Please.
before we kick it over to Walter, I just want to say a word or two. I've been in local government for 28 years, and this may be the most challenging budget I've ever been through. It was incredibly difficult. A confluence of events made this really tight. The only comparable thing I can think of was the 2008 budget that I went through at a city as a result of the Great Recession. So the budget choices that we had to make were very, very difficult and challenging. And again, to the point I think I made earlier, the focus then became on focusing on our core work to the best that we could. But I want to say this before we get started and before Walter sort of gives you the overview, and then we're all happy to answer any questions. I really want to commend, and I know he's not here today, or nobody from council's, members of council are here today. I know Laura's here in the back, but I really want to commend the council leadership. Council President Miller, Vice President Conwell, Finance Chair Turner. We recognized as early as last March that things were going to be difficult, and we started meeting on a monthly basis with council leadership. And in the month or month and a half leading up to the budget introduction by the executive, we met often twice a week, and very often with all three of those council members and the county executive in the room. So every budget's gonna have its pushes and pulls. You know, the executive branch introduces a budget, the legislative branch deliberates and makes adjustments. But I'm particularly proud and thankful of the engagement between our office and council leadership in a very, very difficult time. To try to bring the best budget forward we could. And Laura, I want to just say thank you, and to Joe and Trevor and to on the staff level and the council leadership for everything that you guys did to help us go through this process. They're never fun, but really proud of the fact that we worked on it together. So I wanted to just provide that framework for you as Walter sort of goes over at a high level where we are. The budget will be passed tomorrow night. Council has essentially completed their work after deliberating, having the public hearings, and making its amendments. So a lot of difficult work went into it, but I just wanted to say thank you publicly to the council side for their assistance. And so with that, Walter, I'll ask you to just, if you wouldn't mind, just spend a few minutes going over at a high level where we were, what we're facing, and what the budget entails.
It was funny, you know, the comment was made about public safety and health and human services. I just wanted to be clear, you know, that's almost 50% of our all funds budget is in those two areas. So our all funds budget for the county is roughly $1.9 billion. We have about 7,500 staff, right? 7,514, something like that. It includes increases, 2% cost of living adjustment, also includes 10% increases for healthcare. Our two main operating funds are the general fund and our health and human services levy funds, which, you know, I'll throw those numbers out as well. The general fund budget for 2026 is roughly $633 million and $650 million for 2027. Our health and human services levy budget is roughly $280 million in each year. I mean, that's just generally what our levies bring in, and they're allocated out. What we've seen on the levy side is really we've had increases in our child welfare costs, and we've had increases in our income maintenance costs, primarily food assistance and Medicaid, the programs that Eric and Sabrina talked about a little bit. Those increased costs, you know, the levies are fairly stagnant, you know, the dollars that the property taxes bring in for those. So when we had to increase our allocation of subsidy to the two larger divisions of HHS, we basically had to find it from other areas. So that's where the cuts went into place. So we basically shifted some of our funding around within the levy, around $20 million to both Children and Family Services and Job and Family Services. We had to take it away from the other departments or reduce the other departments, and some of it wound up being different contracts and different services that were being provided. The general fund side, I think that we've got about 100 or so requests that came in. We're already facing some deficits. But in the end, we were able to fund quite a few of the requests, and I think almost every department benefited somehow in some way. And I mean, I can go through some of these things, which ultimately led us to balanced budgets in both areas. Both the levy and the general fund have balanced budgets that are being recommended. Now, council is adding some additional spending on the levy side. It will take it slightly out of balance, but not by much. A lot of programs that are funded there. You know, there's child welfare, there's income maintenance, there's Title 20, you know, services for seniors, there's child support in there. You know, we do fund quite a bit for Metro Health, we do fund quite a bit for the Adams Board, and we pay a fair share of our juvenile court costs from the Health and Human Services Levy Fund. I mean, I could go through some of the things that were funded this year in the general fund, if that's of interest. But I mean, in a nutshell, those are our numbers. I know it's very high level if you guys want some additional detail. I will tell you this, that this entire recommended budget is available. It's online, it's on our website if you want the full details.
Walter, if I may, let me add a couple of extra pieces of information. I want to just expand first a little bit about what Walter said as it relates to investing in children's services and job and family services. Children's services on two fronts primarily. One is board and care for providers for children in our custody. Those rates hadn't been adjusted in a very long time. It's getting to the point where children's services was having a more and more difficult time placing kids because we were less and less competitive with the rates we offered. We had to make that adjustment. That is by virtue of the fact that we haven't kept up with inflation over a long period of time. And also on the children's services side, we invested in more social workers because we recognized in many ways they may be the most valuable employees in our organization because they take care of the kids in our care and our custody. And we wanted to make sure they had the resources and had appropriate caseloads. On the JFS side, 18, 20 months ago, Walter, I green-lighted the hiring of more JFS workers. Why? Because we had not reached pre-COVID staffing levels, because we were seeing increasing wait times. Our wait times were up over 70 minutes if you were making a phone call to try to talk to somebody about your benefits. And while we are always improving processes and using additional and new technology, there's no substitute for right-sizing your staff. And we did that. And we've seen our call wait times drop from over 70 minutes to about 15 minutes, which is pretty incredible. And now we're performing above our large county peers throughout the state. So those investments were important. We instituted a hiring freeze back in the fall, which is still in place. The only exception for that initial hiring freeze is corrections officers. Why? Because we have somewhere close to 700 of them, and the regular churn is such that you need to be constantly hiring classes in order to keep at a reasonable staffing level. But we've instituted that hiring freeze. It will probably extend into early next year, and that has saved us millions of dollars, and it's helped allow us to balance our general fund budget. Within the general fund, we know that the sheriff's office is north of 50% of the general fund budget, Walter.
It is.
So we've been working with the sheriff and his team pretty diligently over the last year or so, and even before then, but specifically with our Office of Innovation to identify ways in which we could schedule better, which we can reduce overtime, which we can be more efficient in terms of where we put our corrections officers to try to reduce costs. That's an ongoing thing that we're going to continue to work on, and it's going to be an ongoing challenge. So we have, and there will be more efficiencies and improvements made in that space in 2026. We did do, I don't know, Sarah, what we would call it. It's a salary equity adjustment evaluation that we did in 2025. We instituted the first phase of that, which is really for our lowest level employees. We did a market rate study to see what folks should be paid all across the organization. We've implemented that for our lowest paid employees, not yet for our medium level and high level employees. We thought, given the budget constraints that we have, it's most important that we take care of those folks on the bottom end of the wage scale. So we've seen that, and I think you may have heard the executive say, we'll be in 2026 without a single employee under $20 an hour, which we're proud of. So within the constraints that we have, we've made some tough choices. We've been able to do it without furloughs or layoffs, and we hope that we can continue to do that. But we've got a lot of pressures on us that remain as it relates particularly to the Health and Human Services side. Very, very, very worried about this. As you heard Walter mention, Council restored some funding to Metro Health, which meant they dipped a little bit into our reserves. That is their prerogative. And of course, we don't oppose investment in our county hospital. But we've been trying our best to preserve our HHS reserves because we know what's coming. We've seen the changes in food assistance that are underway. We know we're going to be held to a higher standard as it relates to a higher sense of scrutiny, not a higher standard, a higher sense of scrutiny as it relates to administrative costs and reimbursements at the HHS level. And more folks are going to be more challenged. And we may not see the state step up. Thinking specifically of the SNAP funding, the admin costs may cost us an unexpected additional $7 to $8 million next year and going forward if the federal government moves forward and implements its plan and the state doesn't step in and fill the void. So while we've been able to introduce a balanced budget and council will pass a essentially balanced budget, we've got a lot of challenges in front of us, and we're going to continue to monitor that on a regular basis. So I will stop there, and we're happy to answer any questions that any of you may have as it relates to our budget.
I have a question, and I thank you to you both for the information shared, and I know these decisions are incredibly challenging, so, and I commend you all for doing what I would consider the absolute best in many difficult circumstances. My question kind of surrounds some of the contracts that I think I've obviously seen some decreases, and all partners that are seeing 2026 or 2027 cuts are incredible. So, I think when I had seen the list of the organizations, they all do great work in different areas, the Tapestry program, Starting Point, Universal Pre-K, many other services. And you may not have the answers, so I totally understand. Is there discussions or support in any way being offered to those organizations on guidance or regional or countywide discussions with other funders of like how can these organizations be supported in this anticipation, as some of them are, I think, getting substantial cuts over 500,000 per year. So any thoughts on like collaboration in that sense of how to ensure these organizations don't see a decrease in their ability to provide service as well?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, and I'll frame it a little bit and then ask Sabrina to respond. I would first say that by and large, the cuts that we had to make to various providers was not necessarily indicative of the value of their programs. But we did have to make some decisions. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier about needing to, focus on our core functions. Is that a program that's nice and we know is helpful to the community but doesn't meet our core mission? That usually impacts the decision. We also were very intentional about, and the county executive was very involved in the discussions about this, as was council leadership, of going line by line for almost every provider. But the last thing we wanted to do was some sort of blanket cut that was indiscriminate and didn't take considered judgments about how it might impact an organization or how it might move the community forward. So the choices we made were very considered. They were not done haphazardly. So I would say that. Sabrina, I'll ask you to talk a little bit more about it, but one more point before I move on to Sabrina is, out of this process, the executive has really challenged us now to up our game as it relates to performance, contract performance, and evaluation. Naturally, contracts usually have some level of outputs or outcomes measured, but we need to be better at measuring that. We need to be better at understanding what you're getting in terms of what you pay for. Sometimes that's easier to figure out, sometimes it's a little harder, or maybe a little more qualitative to figure out, but we're going to spend a lot of time over the next biennium trying to address that, and Chris has been very specific about asking us to do that.
So, to piggyback on what Eric just said about the actual contracts, there's two things. So, there's a group, Human Services Chamber, under the Center for Community Solutions. So I think it was incredible timing that they stood up that chamber, because they are working across the continuum of all nonprofits that are members and I think at this point they have over 100 members. And many of them have contracts with the county, that they can work on some things in their back office, share some synergy around IT, legal, et cetera, how to get some efficiencies there. Because for us, just like we are tightening our belt and trying to look at every contract, they themselves, we've had this conversation, we've had open conversations with them. We have to do it, you have to do it, working together on some different projects. Maybe two nonprofits start working together on a specific project. So that's the one thing, getting efficiencies on the other side. And we've had these conversations with executive in the room with nonprofit leadership. The other piece, which very interesting, internally, just really looking at our own process, looking at each contract individually and then in a continuum of who's doing what. So really digging down into those. So he's put forth a request to different directors to lean in. One thing that I would say about this budget process, and yes, it was line by line, the directors too had a lot of influence. So it wasn't just council, it wasn't just the executive and executive staff. Every director, first and foremost, looked at their budgets and kind of analyzed from their perspective. They're in it every day, and they made some recommendations to the executive. So it wasn't just the executive and
Wasn't somebody from on
Right.
high.
It was
It's a really good
very
point, Sabrina.
much
Yeah.
tripod, if you will,
Yeah.
approach. So I've been here a long time, so that was really good to see, and the amount of discussion that went on was great. And to answer the other side of your question, with philanthropy, we've had 2 meetings with philanthropy now to talk about our budget, do an in-depth budget presentation, and to really get some synergy with them on what they're funding, to really make sure they understood where we were hitting some bumps in the road, so they knew a little bit of ahead of time, so as people started coming to them, we could preserve some bigger projects we were working on. Now, I don't know specifically those line items and what they're deciding, but we walked in lockstep with them to update the whole collaborative, many funders around the community.
And I'll add one final point to what Sabrina just said. We're not just talking to our philanthropic partners about just trying to plug holes where we can no longer meet. We're also partnering with them. We're partnering with one particular foundation, big foundation partner to, for instance, relook at our homeless system, soup to nuts. Providers, funding, structure, shelters, everything. So it isn't just about how can you help us plug holes, although it is certainly that. It's also about how can we collaborate in this community to work smarter and better.
No, I think that I'm going to encourage many people, and I ask this question intentionally, because, working within the nonprofit sector, I think to kind of our discussion point earlier about communication around what is the county doing, and you're doing immense work across the board to balance all of these really heavy priorities and deficits and really making sure, and I think everything that was shared right now, again, most people probably are not aware of like the intentionality around the work and the design and why these decisions are made. And I think it really helps when everybody is aware of the process, because at times it could just look like cuts are made, but people may not think about why. And the other side is, county contracts or grants or funding only goes so far, in a sense of like, we do need the other partners. You've been having discussions with philanthropy in the for-profit sector, so I really commend you for the deep intentional kind of design of making sure there's as many people involved in the process.
I appreciate that, and I'll just I'll finish on this final thought. For those of you that work with or are part of or in touch with nonprofits, another element that we're going to continue to look at on a go-forward basis is sustainability. How is your organization able to sustain doing what you're doing? In some instances, it might make sense for the county to fund something year after year after year after year. But in other instances, we can be perhaps seed funding or funding to get something started. But in addition to showing outcomes and performance, we're gonna also start asking about what's your long-term plan? How's your funding plan? What's your strategy? So just to add another layer of intentionality to what you're talking about, we're gonna have to look at that as well, and we intend to.
If I may, I would offer too, as we think about strategy for future, I'm reminded of the Kellogg Foundation grant that Dr. Gullett and the team came together to put forward. And it leaves me wondering around what opportunities are there for the intentional work of the county that are at a national scale. And that might require a level of collaboration that we need to build some muscle around. But how might we use this moment as an opportunity to really be diligent in designing strategy that might speak to a national foundation? I was in a conversation with a leader of a national nonprofit outside of Ohio and just talking about, for example, in the space of young people, where is the energy now that the plug is pulled on equity in the ways that it has been? And the energy is around youth flourishing. Well, what might a strategy in Cuyahoga County, Northeast Ohio look like around youth flourishing that might grant us an opportunity to engage a national funder in ways that might fund programs and partnerships that are right now going to be perhaps threadbare, right? And then we'll live with the impacts of that in a few years, or, you know, when our young people reach an age where we gotta do something. And then we'll have to pay the price then.
So I would just say in response, Aviva, as part of our overall effort here, a little bit about how we're talking to our local nonprofits and trying to partner and plug holes. We are encouraging across the organization opportunities to seek funding at the federal and state level because those still exist. They may be different priorities than they have been in the past, but they still exist. But we are also, to your point, trying to identify resources wherever they may come. And to that end, if anyone in this group has good ideas about funding opportunities with national associations or foundations that marries together with the work that we do, we're all ears. David Merriman, Chris Murray, and all the HHS directors are regularly looking for additional resources. And so we're always happy to have that kind of conversation should you have an idea.
Thank you.
Thanks, Walter.
Page 13 of the book outlines the HHS, okay?
Thank you. Roberts, I want to recognize you and thank you for being here. I know you have to step away in about 15 minutes, so thank you for the presentation and discussion. With that, we will turn to Ms. Demansky Diaz for an update on the Central Services campus and Ms. English.
I have a whole intro, but
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
forego it. It was
Yeah, I'm watching the
and
In the interest of time.
Yeah. Wright has to live as well for the
Okay.
same event.
So we were here about a year, well, in September, I think of '24, and provided you some real initial, conversation on what we were planning. And so a lot has happened over the past 15 months, and so we are excited to present to you some of the stuff we've been working on, and we have a lot of imagery too to show you, which is really great.
We'll go quickly through this agenda. So just a brief background and process of where we've been. We're kind of using this slide as we go to council every time just to show how we're moving across the bar. We are right now in sort of this phase 2 conceptual design phase. We have received the detailed design drawings from our architect and are working towards what we call the guaranteed maximum price, which is going to tell us how much this is actually going to cost to build. We have a budget right now that we've been working towards, but this will the design builder will guarantee their price once we set that GMP and move forward. So we're right now in that phase. We hope to bring a number to council next year around quarter Q2, early Q2. But you will see some groundbreaking if you've driven past the site. You'll see fencing is up right now. We are going to start working on demoing of the existing buildings. We'll be moving some dirt around the site prior to us reaching that guaranteed maximum price. There is some early phased work that we can do in order to keep our back end schedule. So we'll be working on that. This is the project team that you've seen before. We have a criteria architect who is finishing up their work. We will then transfer it over to the design builder, and they will handle the rest of the project as we move forward. On the right is the county core team. Laurel and I are on that, and then we have representatives from the sheriff's department that work on our project daily. I won't bore you with what detailed design is if you don't know, but really finalizing kind of the major pieces of the work. So we right now don't have every little light switch location and electric box, but we do have the whole facility laid out where everything is in plan, pretty much sized exactly how we will. There could be some shift, is an office here or is it over here? Is a cubicle move from here to here? But in general, what you're gonna see today is pretty much where we're headed and well set as we move forward. This is the site plan, which I believe we showed a site plan last time. We had a high level, but this is now our final site plan as we see it today. You'll see some of the main features. Transportation Boulevard is the road running north and south. You can see I-480 to the south of the site, Granger Road on the north. And so we really have the main entry to our facility off Transportation. It aligns well with the entry and exit point to 480. And then you'll come in, sort of hit that roundabout sorry, I can't tell if I have a mouse here. Yeah, I do. In this right where it says easement, employee parking would head this direction towards 15. Where you see number 12 is solar panels. So it's a win-win. We get environmental points kind of for producing our own electricity on site. And we also get covered parking for our staff and the sheriff vehicles. Then down by 13 and 9, these are more the public entry points and public parking. Entering the building at 2. The sheriff admin building is where 8 is located. And then the jail proper is housing units are really where 3 and 4 are. 7 is the Sally Port. That will be where the official law enforcement vehicles are coming and going, and also for us transporting anyone from the facility downtown for court as needed will come through 7. 14 was an opportunity that we saw. If you've been or are familiar with the site, there was a building that was built that was supposed to be an Aldi, never opened as an Aldi. However, we're able to use that as a training center for our sheriff's department, who will also extend to probably other law enforcement throughout the county. So it's a little bit of a self-contained building, but on the site that will really work well for our facility. The football field is just for scale. That is not a football field on site. Just sometimes some people get excited about it and some people wonder what we're up to. So just to provide that little bit of information there.
What is number 5, CUP?
The CUP is the centralized utility plant. So it's where all of the HVAC and everything is happening back there. Yep. The key that's just showing for the back end is really our maintenance in and out is gonna be really easy. Right now in our facility, it's a fiasco kind of getting people in, getting them up, people working on the systems. This is gonna be really nice, kind of off in the edge. People will be able to service the building without interrupting operation. Any other questions on site? Sorry, we'll go into some more imagery. This is the exciting part. We think that finally came out of the last many months of planning is what is gonna look like, right? Everyone's been saying to us, come on, just give us some pictures. And so we finally gotten to the point where we feel like this is well set in what it's going to look like. Of course, materials are getting finalized, but the look is really here. So this is entering off Transportation. What you see is mostly sheriff admin. Right now, that's the building that was on the east side of the site. And as we get closer, you can start to zoom in on the main lobby that anyone coming to the building public-wise or attorney visits or family members coming to pay a bill or drop off property or take property will all come through this main lobby that you're seeing. Again, just getting a little bit closer. And then this is a head-on vision. So now you can really see how the lobby is the main entry point. To the right would be your sheriff admin facility. To your left would be the jail proper. Just turning you a little bit on the side there. and then looking really more from the jail side. The doors you see on this piece is also the reentry space. We're really focused on a reentry experience that Laurel can talk a little more in detail about, that we've kind of learned from Franklin County we want to elevate from them, is providing services at exit that really help people, instead of just opening a door and saying good luck or giving a bus pass, really putting them in touch with the benefits that they need to be in touch with. Do you need an ID? Can we help you get that here? Is there some food instability that you need right away? How are you doing with housing? Where do you stand? Really in all aspects, in putting these people all in one spot. Where Sabrina kind of talked about what the food bank is doing on their end for just the general community, we'd like to kind of recreate some of that here for reentry. And then also people can come from the outside just to get questions answered. This is going to be a resource center that they could use if they needed to get in touch with some of these folks that are in the space. Anything more on that? When
Well,
we get to it?
we have some interior imagery
Okay.
that I'll talk about.
This is kind of boring. This is the back end of the actual housing units that you see. What the intent is really just to show you the amount of windows and space really in the rec rooms when we see a image of the housing unit, to understand that light that's coming in and access to daylight at all times of day from inside the housing units is greatly improved from anything we have in our current facility. This is a high level image of just trying to show when you come in from the entry and where the lobby area is, kind of where these different big groups are. Jail administration is happening here, jail programming, that's that release reentry center that we saw, and how you go through screening right into visitation. So it's really just trying to show you that everything is easy access. You're not trudging through a building if you've been in the current facility where you're trying to get to visitation or you're trying to get to video court, really handling all these areas right on the front end so people are able to get to them quickly and easily.
And the jail programming, that's where the administrative functions
Yes,
are happening.
sorry.
We're not bringing
People,
folks,
yeah.
residents down to that space. We are actually very intentionally bringing the programs to the residents. So you'll see as we show you the housing units that every housing unit has programming space inside of it, both one-on-one versus as well as group space. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment.
The other side that I didn't show is really when you go to the sheriff admin and showing you some of the employee spaces. That was a big focus also of ours, not only for the people that are in the jail, but also our staff that are spending most of their time in this facility. And they are spending more time here than at their houses, some of them. So really making sure we have the right locker space, fitness areas. These are high-stress jobs that most of the folks in this building have, and being able to give them that outlet, giving them staff dining areas, a courtyard where they can actually go outside and eat or just take in some air while they're on their break or their lunch hour. So just showing a few of those pieces. Here's some imagery going into the main lobby, just looking at really open, light spaces. That's a big focus of the whole building, is really making sure that we're providing access to the outside. We heard it from even our employees that some of them stay in the building from morning to night, where they come in the dark, they leave in the dark, and literally have no idea what time it is during the day if they're not looking at their watch. So providing a lot of space for light to get into this facility. Just showing you through how screening would work and exiting through the glass area to the left. Here's where we talked about if you checked in, if you had any business you needed to do with jail administration or you were coming for a visit, providing the windows on the left, you'd check in, you'd wait to the right, and then you'd be called back when your visit is ready. So again, providing space for families to rest, wait until they're able to be seen in the back of the facility. A lot of people had interest in kind of what does visitation look like in the new facility, and we're building visitation for all purposes. This is the visitation area. You see to the bottom of the screen, one-on-one, non-contact visiting. So this could be a family member coming to visit someone in the facility. The outside perimeter is kind of the public area, people coming to visit, and then the inside is the folks coming from the facility to have a visit. To the north, we're providing more group type visiting. So this is seen as, sometimes we heard from an attorney that they really want to bring in someone's family member with them so that they can meet with the attorney and their family all in one space. And so that will allow for this contact professional visiting to happen up at the top. And then to the right, you see 3 of those rooms that are really family kind of group visits. So again, with different programs that we can have where, people are bringing children and families, that they can sit in a more relaxed environment to have their visit on that side.
And sometimes people, I don't think this group would question why that would be necessary, but there are people that have questioned why would you have, this type of visitation available for folks. And one thing that I want to point out, and I don't think people realize, is that we have usually 100 to 150 people sentenced to our jail every day. So those are folks that have anywhere from a 30-day to a year-long sentence that are in our facility. And if they were in prison, they would be able to see their family, but they're serving their sentence, within our jail. So making sure that people have regular access to their family as much as possible is and not just, via video screen, is something that we really value, and we know that helps to humanize the experience of being in an otherwise, very challenging space.
And these are all the in-person visitation. We will still have the access to the video and virtual visit, which is a more regular, all the time occurrence that can happen on the housing unit. Here's just a shot of sort of inside the waiting of the visitation area to give you a sense. Sure.
So one of the things that we have talked about very extensively is how do we make the space more humanizing, more rehabilitative, and less sterile and institutional. And so one of the ideas that our architects brought forth to us is the idea of using color and different types of textures and furnishings and floorings to make it feel less like your typical jail, but something that actually will help to bring the temperature down of the folks that are having to reside in the space. So these are kind of the themes that they have proposed to us that we're going with, and that's just water, forest, and meadow. These are these are themes that we see in nature in this region, and so they really were trying to incorporate those ideas and the colors into the spaces. So we have some different imagery of our housing units here. This is a single cell general population unit. If you look to the far end there, where the light is coming in, that would be the rec room. They, as Nicole mentioned, they all have windows, and they have windows that actually open too, so that people can get fresh air as they're in the rec area and the rec space. The idea would be that would be anytime people are out of their cells, they would be able to access that space. And that helps significantly. In our current jail, people have to be transported from their housing unit to a rec area. So that can only happen as much as you have guards or officers to move them, and as much as those spaces are available. So this really allows, 12 to however many hours they're out of their cells, the opportunity to move around. I just want to point out some of the, the lighting that you see there and some of the paneling on top, both from an aesthetic perspective are really important, but also are going to help with sound. So I think those of you that if you've ever been in our jail or any older jail, is very loud. There's a lot of metal and steel, and which there still is here, but we're trying to soften some of that noise by putting this alternative flooring in, some sound panels in the ceilings and the walls. You'll see in some of the other imagery as well. So this is one of our an example of what our medical detox unit will be like. So every day we have between 40 to 50 people that are going through detox in our jail. And so we are trying to make that space, one, more calming and visually able to see everybody that is going through that experience, because it can be a very rough time for people. There's a lot of discomfort in your body, and just kind of getting through that time can lead to pretty adverse outcomes. So we make sure that, and we actually do have a detox unit in the current facility, so I want to point that out as well. It's not as nice as this is, but we do monitor patients very closely. We make sure that they have medication-assisted treatment and therapy when they're ready for for that stage. So just an example there. So this is our behavioral care center. So if you recall the site map, there was a number 3 that was kind of above the reentry and resource center. And the idea with this space is there's going to be 60 beds, 3 different units, 24 beds in 2 of the units and 12 beds in another unit, and that we'll be able to provide kind of hospital level behavioral care support that is different than what they would get in the regular facility. Though they will still get therapy and treatment and medications in the regular facility, this would be an alternative space where more of a healing kind of therapeutic environment. It's modeled after a facility in Davidson County in Tennessee, where people that are admitted into the facility have the opportunity to have their charges dropped or reduced if they go through treatment in the facility. What we found is talking with our public defenders and our prosecutors and our judges here that we may not have as big of a population that fits exactly into that category, but there are other populations that would definitely be best served here. So people that might be waiting to go to a treatment facility or people that might be needing some kind of psychiatric evaluation and stabilization but don't necessarily need to go out to like a state hospital. So we are exploring different ways of how we're going to use the space. The jail leadership staff knows that we can fill these beds, today if we wanted to. So it is a bit of a work in progress because we want to get it right and we want to make sure that we're best serving the needs of primarily the residents, but also the needs of the staff and the other stakeholders in the community. And this is another example of a housing unit. So this is the medical clinic area. It's kind of hard to see. I know the floor plan looks kind of small, but some of the things that I want to make sure that we point out that are enhancements from what we currently offer is as you enter the top of the where that resilient flooring space is. So that will be the main entrance. People will be able to walk in, and we have open seating there up to the left. So again, the idea is to kind of normalize the space and not make it feel as confined as what you might experience right now, where you get immediately put into a bullpen. But again, to create this kind of somewhat more of a calming experience. So up in the right corner there, you'll see a dental clinic where we have 3 dental chairs. Right now we have 2, but 3 will allow us to do more extensive care. So that's really important that we expanded that space. As you go down into the space, you'll see some triage areas right there to the left. And so that's where the nurses will assess and see what types of care people might need or get vitals and prepare them for their visit with their provider. On the hallway then going to the right from that triage area, we will have an on-site lab, which we do now, but this is a little bit more extensive. And there's an elevator bay right there in the clinic. So if somebody needs to be transported out quickly, we will have the elevator access right there, which is a nice improvement from what we have right now. In the center there is the nursing workstation. We have exam rooms along the left side there, and then down on the bottom, we have 6 exam rooms. On the right, at the end of that hallway, we have a dialysis on-site. We're going to have on-site dialysis, which is a big deal because when people need to go out to dialysis, it takes 2 security officers to go with them and can be a 5 to 6 hour long experience several times a week. So bringing that on-site will help reduce our costs around transports. And then there at the bottom, you see we will have a physical therapy space. A lot of folks that come in have a lot of traumatic injuries that need rehab to be able to get back to functionality that they need. So we are expanding that space here in the facility as well. And then finally, at the bottom of the space, there's an X-ray machine, and there's some ultrasound space as well. And then far to the left there, you'll see the pharmacy. So that is a really important space because one of our goals is for people to have their medication within the next med pass of their arrival at the facility, so that they do not miss out on any of their needed medications. And that's some imagery of what that will look like. And then I'll just talk quickly through this because I know we are running short on time, but we are going to have an infirmary in the facility as well. So this is not hospital level care, but more like skilled nursing level care, so that we can keep people in the facility that might otherwise have had to go to the hospital or might be able to recover here versus staying in the hospital, or might have needed to go to a nursing home. We want to be able to manage all of that care on site. Again, from a security perspective, it helps reduce costs on having people sitting out or having security officers sitting at the hospital for care, but also allows our nursing staff to have one central location where they're watching patients. Right now, these patients might be at the hospital, they might be at a skilled nursing facility, but they might also be housed in a specialized housing unit, or they might be sitting in the clinical area right now on a gurney. Like, we just do not have the space for this type of care in the current facility. So this is a huge enhancement. Another image of that. And then this is the inside look at the release and reentry space. And I won't add too much. Nicole talked a lot about it. The window you see on the right, though, is going to be a medical window. So everybody that leaves that needs to get medications called into their pharmacy, or if they have upcoming appointments, we'll be able to communicate all of that to them. If they have medications that are still on their cart that we could give to them as they leave, we want to make that process happen as well. So again, it's kind of meeting the basic needs of, do you need, to use a phone? Do you need a transportation? Do you have a place to go to sleep tonight? Managing those basic needs, but also thinking about how we might, engage them in some vocational, if they want to get involved in a vocational program, or if they need help, signing up for benefits or whatever. We want to bring, all of that into this space.
And it won't just happen on exit. These
Right.
people will be working with them while they're in the facility, but it's kind of that final step as they leave. This is our boring engineering part, but everybody keeps asking about what are the costs. We're sitting on this budget right this second. This is the latest we presented to council. We're at $890 million. That's everything, including construction and soft costs. We are still working through tweaking. There's a few things we're working on, but this is our latest from the SD estimate that we have presented to council.
How large is the building?
Yeah, just around 1 million square feet. Just
Including
the other day, I
sheriff's
said I
admin?
need that number in my head exactly, including sheriff's admin, yes. So it's pretty significant. This includes also the rework of that Aldi building. Again, that's not a huge component to it, and all the land development costs.
And the construction of a jail or a prison is so expensive that the level of security that you have to have in the walls and in the doors and is like, that's what.
Yeah, we're really trying to get ahead of the unknowns. I know Glenn will appreciate this, of just what's happening with tariffs and the supplies coming in and labor, and really trying to understand that cost of construction, which is fluctuating quite a bit over the last couple of years here. So tying into that, and that's why getting to that guaranteed maximum price for us is really important, because once we lock that in, now that the risk is on the design builder and to deliver, but we're really focused on, just making sure we have the labor market in town to be able to do the work, because we have a lot of construction going on around town, and of course with the Browns and what they're doing, a lot of similar trades are needed on both sides. So working together with our partners to understand kind of schedules for all major projects around town, and making sure that we've got the right people lined up, and the supply of steel and materials that we need coming in. So these are the next stages of design development. This was kind of an older slide that we showed to council. We're almost here now, see through December, we're in December, I guess. But just finalizing all of these pieces of design development and then making our way into that costing piece. I think just that we wanted to touch a little bit on community workforce goals. So we are still, we do still have contracted goals with our design builder for SBE, MBE, and WBE participation, and this is what they are working towards. And really identifying these partners both on a enterprise level and then also on a workforce level to be involved in the project. We've met several times in Garfield Heights with, Garfield Heights as our new city that we're going to be in. They're really interested in getting their residents and residents around working on the project, right? People are driving by saying, how do I get involved? And so our design builders have been meeting with different community groups and really trying to let people know how they can get involved and work on the project. So just to give some highlights of where Gilbane and their team has been, they've had several community efforts to date. They've been working with Director Luckett and her team on kind of partnering with county efforts overall, and then their own, they've got several big projects around, so their own, bringing their own projects and needs to the table. So they've attended some county vendor fairs. They had upcoming events, which now the 10/30/23 one has already occurred, and they're working on an outreach day for Garfield directly to have something out on site there, and really just these tools that they'll use to monitor, and then us be able to report back on kind of labor and workforce goals. So if this is of interest to some of you, really getting you in touch with the right people over on the design build team to engage kind of your community and stakeholders on working on this is really focused on how can I work on the project. And that's all we've got. We tried to be quick. So if anyone has any questions or wants to go back to any slides, I know we ran through them quickly, but in an effort to get you guys through your meeting.
Two quick questions. Thank you for the presentation. It may not be answered now, but understanding the protocol and process for pregnant females at the jail, is there anything that's new that's being done for them as far as like aftercare with them and their child? Again, not have to be addressed now, but just a question for that. And then secondly, is there any consideration for possibly consolidating the diversion center on East 55th, where now officers are sort of taking them there? It would be kind of fitting if they were able to come to that new site at the Central Service.
Yeah, so in terms of pregnant women, we have a pretty comprehensive and like a national model program even right now happening in our jail. So we have, it's funded through First Year Cleveland. So we offer centering pregnancy inside the jail. We're the only, as far as I know, we are still the only jail in the nation that offers this group prenatal care model in the jail. And there is a partnership with Birthing Beautiful Communities as well, and they offer doula support, so they come to all of our group care. And then if the woman does happen to deliver while she's in the facility or in custody, she will have a doula at the hospital, and then as well as postpartum as well. They can also, in our current facility and in this facility, we will have breast milk pumping rooms too, which have a freezer and a hospital grade pump, so that women can continue to pump milk for their babies as long as they choose to. We had a woman that I think pumped for over a year in the facility. In terms of actually like having the like a Marysville kind of model, in terms of having the baby in the jail, that's not something that we're going to be able to do. But I do hope with the family visitation that the babies will be able to come in and that mom will be able to interact with baby in that way. I also know that the jail staff work very closely with the judges. If they can get the woman out of the facility prior to giving birth, that's always the preference. So there is a very strong advocacy team around that to make sure that pregnant women are not in the facility any longer than they need to be. And then your second question about the diversion center. So I think, because are you on the diversion center board? I thought you were. So I'm sure most people have heard about the crisis center that is being built on the old St. Vincent campus. And so that ultimately will take the place of the diversion center. We were very intentional about the idea, because there is an argument for putting a diversion center on a jail campus. But I think that to kind of reduce the stigma of the mental health justice system integration, we really wanted to keep it separate and away from the jail so that people didn't automatically go to their head, if I go to this crisis center, I might land in jail, so just, really keeping those physically separate. What Nicole and I saw in Houston, though, was really impressive, and I'll just talk for a few seconds about that, or just a minute about that. And actually Naila was there too, I forgot. But we saw officers bringing people so first of all, they have a crisis center model in Houston, and it's very comprehensive and it works really well, and they have a lot of officers that just, immediately go to the crisis center. But we saw a case where the officer brought somebody in and was about to book them in, and somebody was on site from the crisis center, was co-located there at the jail, and the name came up. I think the officer knew that they were on the list of people that, kind of frequently came in, but also had a mental health diagnosis. So rather than booking them in, they went to the crisis center staff and they said, hey, is this somebody that could benefit from going to the crisis center? Yes, so they didn't book them in, and then there was transport from the jail over to the crisis center. So not ideal, but the fact that the law enforcement was so in tune to who were the people that could be diverted or deflected, even after they kind of, brought them to the facility, I think is where we would like to get to.
Thank you.
Quick, so I'm assuming a billion-dollar building, this is structurally designed to be able to be added onto at some, in the future?
So we'll go back to site. We do have expansion if necessary. I'll show you where. So it would ideally be to the north here. Instead of going vertical, you would go horizontal to the north.
So, so from a medical perspective, I see situations, and we've all heard of situations where inmates I consider to be patients are not given medications that they need. As a transplant surgeon, I've seen people reject kidneys and such. And Laura, I'm sure you're all over this. Are there specific policies in place to make sure that the formulary, will accommodate all medication needs for patients?
Yeah, for sure. So the formulary is really comprehensive in the jail right now. It is quite broad, and some people have said that it's maybe too broad, but we don't. The correctional medicine team does not believe that. If somebody comes in on a medication, particularly like if it's a transplant medication, or if they're getting Hep C treatment or something that might not be on the formulary, they make arrangements to make sure that they will continue. In terms of the timeliness, the idea would be that they would get their health screening, not the idea, the policy is that they get their health screening within 4 hours of arrival. They do a complete, review of medical, mental health, and substance use disorder history, can look at their meds, and then determine, what needs to be ordered. They order them immediately in intake, provider signs off on them, and then they would get them at the next med pass.
Is the EMS going to be on site also, or parked there? Is the location?
That is not, we have not yet determined how, EMS will.
It might be a nice thing to have, given trying to drive down 480 and get to the hospitals. And
Yeah.
also, I know metros, but how about Marymount? That's the closest hospital.
Yeah, so we've started very initial conversations with the Cleveland Clinic Community Outreach Team, and so we have to, we will continue those conversations.
And just back to the expansion, we did, while we have 1,800 beds right now that were being built, we did size the main core functions for 2,400. So the food and service, the laundry, the medical, those are sized in case we needed to go up to those beds. So, because you wouldn't go in and kind of expand the kitchen later on, that would be complicated. So our core services have been sized for that larger footprint.
Dr. Gullah? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. This was a very comprehensive review, and we'll look forward to the next opportunity to be updated.
Thanks for staying for the meeting.
No problem.
I know we are running low on time, but I do want to quickly pivot to Mr. Shumate. Member Shumate, if you would offer a quick update on the community survey.
Sure, appreciate the opportunity, and everyone's support and involvement in facilitating these surveys. We've had 3 or 4. The 4th one is this Thursday, so looking forward to that one. A couple of things that we asked Dr. Wright in terms of any themes that Dr. Wright's our CSU research lead, that she can share with us. She gave me 4 things to talk about. One were, this is feedback from stakeholders from the first 3 focus groups. All, I won't say all, but her presence or thought was that resource scarcity is an issue. Adverse environmental conditions is consistent. Structural barriers to opportunity, and then systematic racism are the 4 areas that she felt, she heard from the three folks that she had. Specifically in economic opportunity focus group, she offered 4 following themes. Too few opportunities in urban areas for training and economic mobility, cultural disconnects with youth opportunities, the need for equity in bidding for government contracts and small business opportunities, the lack of incentives for education, schools that devote more time to, schools should devote more time to money management. Those were the 5 things specifically around economic development that. Next step after 4th focus group is to then, these focus groups are meant to help inform the survey, which we will need to then go out to the market in 2026 to get specific feedback from community. We've talked about lots of things. It could be a QR code, it could be electronic, it could be with various audiences. So we'll probably be spending a lot more time in the first quarter trying to figure out how we're going to disseminate this group to get thousands of respondents to that. And again, it's another ask of probably this board and county staff to help us point us in the right direction for where and how we might tap into that. And are there natural meetings of youth, of seniors, others who we could be in front of at certain time that's already scheduled, or their county fair, like the fair that I think the purchasing and economic we had. There are places like that where you can just naturally get in front of folks and things we'll be looking forward to.
Thank you. Progress made. With that, I know we are again down to very few minutes, but I do want to turn toward Director Nemastill first, and if there are any updates, critical updates that you'd like the case to be aware of from the Department of Human Services.
Sure, I have a few updates. I'll try and be quick. Sarah Nemastill, I'm the Director of Human Resources for the County Executive. Good afternoon. So we're pleased that the executive's recommended biennium budget includes funding to continue the county's tuition reimbursement program. For 2025, HR has received 80 applications to participate in the program by attending courses at Walden Wallace, CSU, or Cuyahoga County Community. In terms of ongoing HR initiatives, so we've been really focused on compensation, as Chief Janice spoke about earlier. But in terms of where we're at now, we're continuing to work on an overall compensation philosophy and revising our policies related to compensation and total rewards to address the goal of operational excellence and fiscal responsibility, design our comp programs in a manner that both support current and long-term county employees, and promote transparency and fairness. We are working with a consultant, Troop HR. Early in the summer, Troop met with members of the county department management and deputies to understand leadership's views on the talent marketplace in their specific agencies. And later in the summer, classified non-bargaining employees were invited by email to complete a survey of their perspectives on compensation, more broadly, including pay progression, time off, work-life balance, career growth, and development opportunities. We had great participation in the survey. 1,318 classified non-bargaining employees that were invited, and 984 of them participated. So we're anxiously awaiting the detailed analysis of the results from our consultant Troop to continue on our work in this process. We've also been focused very much on performance management this year. Early this year, we launched our pilot performance management process for our non-bargaining employees. We began with an informal goals component that encouraged regular check-ins with employees, focusing on performance and developmental goals. This resulted in submission of more than 1,800 SMART goals into our Infor-based goals module in our ERP system. And now we are preparing for performance appraisals for the same group for the 2025 year, using the new Infor-based performance management module as well. Our 2025 evaluations are part of a pilot program, like I said, so the primary purpose is really to give employees the opportunity to sit with their managers and get feedback on how they're doing, and direction and how they can improve in the coming year, and give managers the opportunity to practice using this new process. These results, we're not calibrating across the organization until after we get all the results in, but that will help us really focus on what kind of training we need to do next year and how we can improve the process as we finalize and refine everything for the coming year.
I want to thank Sarah for all her work in this space. She knows this has been an issue of mine when I got here, realizing that the consistency of doing performance appraisals had fallen off a cliff. And so we've been working over a couple of years slowly to help socialize this with employees, getting back to annual regular performance appraisal processes. And so, Sarah, I appreciate all your work on that.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Yeah, it's been a long road, and we gotta incorporate it into our 29 bargaining units next year, hopefully. So, one step at a time, but
Or 28.
yeah.
I'm teasing her because my office does them. She knows that.
Oh, right. It took me a second.
Right,
Yes,
you got
Clerk
it. I
Bird,
was
full
teasing.
disclosure, has done performance evaluations since
Day
ever
one.
since I've been at the county since 2018. So
Let people know where they're at.
Yes.
Right, Laura, remember we.
never misses a beat. And then our internal inclusion committee, just a shout out to them in September. They hosted an excellent and informative panel discussion regarding the importance of voting, particularly in local elections, as part of their Can We Talk Conversations That Matter panel series. And this panel featured Anthony Caliger, the Deputy Director from the County Board of Elections, and Angelique Gates, the Senior Strategist at Cleveland Votes. And if you didn't have an opportunity to watch the event, you can still do so via the county's YouTube page. And those are HR's updates.
Thank you.
One quick question, does the county have a salary for all employees or like a floor?
So,
Some institutions, like, everybody's above $20, does the county have any kind of?
So Chief Janice spoke about that earlier, but we've been working on compensation really since Executive Ronan took office. That's been a priority of his and of mine since I have been in my seat May of 2023, and we've done a number of things. But one of the things that we are most proud of is we have really worked hard to implement a $20 an hour wage floor. And in 2026, we will be there for all of our employees. We're not quite there yet, but we're almost there. And so that required mostly amongst our bargaining units, but slowly but surely we've made it there.
I was asking on behalf of Clerk Bird, I want to try and get you.
Anything you can do, anything you
She's
can do
above
to
the
right.
$20 floor.
I like
So she's
20.50.
Thank you, that's
Thanks,
impressive. Director Luckett.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to give an update on the Department of Equity and Inclusion. I'm going to just, again, about time, I'm just going to highlight a few of the programs. One of the goals, and it's been consistent through the different points of views presented today, is that when we implement our programs for inclusivity, we're focusing on increasing awareness and increasing access and increasing opportunities. And I like to look at it as we're trying to make sure, as you talk about, you can be efficient with your resources, but we feel that would kind of be a fail if we leave populations behind. Because a lot of times when you're efficient, you can do the easy, and that still leaves certain populations behind. Like if we're talking about we only have to advertise 2 times, or we only have to do it digitally, there are populations that we know have that digital divide, or may not be aware of where to find those opportunities within the county. So again, our programs are about trying to increase awareness, access, and resulting in opportunities. A couple of items that we did this year that I'm just going to highlight One was a partnership with HR, the Personnel Review Commission, and DEI on our mid-year equity summit. It was, the target audience was any supervisor level and above. We had more than 200 supervisors, and the goal was to not only increase awareness about our hiring process, our personnel resources, but also during the different phases of nurturing our most valuable resource, which is our workforce. So we talked about how do we recruit a most qualified and diverse group? How do we, once they're recruited and hired, how do we make sure that they're developed and promoted? And each agency provided within their reign of authority how they're looking to advance an inclusive process throughout that the workforce. Then we also, not leaving behind the non-supervisors, we continue to implement our What's Next program. This year, based on a survey that we put out to the employees in the know with communications, the top topic that they wanted to hear about was microaggressions, do's and don'ts. 2 years ago, we did a general overview about microaggressions. This year, we focus more on trying to improve their toolkit. So maybe it may not rise to the level of a clear hostile work environment, but what are the unconscious biases that are occurring? So we worked on do's and don'ts as part of that workshop. We had that was virtual also. We didn't do as many virtual sessions, but we did have over 60 employees that within the 2 sessions that tuned in, and we also posted that on our intranet, on the county intranet, so that is accessible for employees after that. And the last point I wanted to bring up was our vendor fair, just to get to the supplier diversity component. We want to make sure that there's opportunities, not just for the digital, where you can go into the county's website, or if you're already a vendor with the county, where you know where your contract is expiring, so you know where you can go get those resources. We're looking at continuing with that face-to-face opportunity where they can get questions answered about how do they find, with the purchasing department, where do they find the bid opportunities? How do they get registered? How do they update their registration? We have the county staff, DEI staff there, so if they get certified with the county, how can we walk them through that process? And also the Office of Small Businesses there, so that they could get resources to help their business. And those include opportunities for any grants or even the extension through the county of the county capital partners on different partners that we have contractual agreements with to help them with those opportunities. So we've continued those, and again, this year, we've had more than 60 businesses. And while this is our second year of doing 3 times a year, increasing awareness, I thought the biggest, there was an increased percentage of businesses that were not currently county businesses or county vendors with contracts, but they had gotten the awareness about these opportunities and actually came to the vendor fairs to get those opportunities. And we're working to leverage those, like Nicole mentioned. We work with the Gil Bain, who's the hired consultant to do the jail, so that we can leverage that opportunity. Hey, you're coming out to the vendor fair. Here are opportunities also for this major project that the county is doing. But we know that there's still room for improvement, so that's the part that we're doing between now and the end of the year, is looking at how are we reaching, what are the impacts we've had, and how can we improve that impact. So again, talked about opportunities. Lynn always sends me emails about different great questions. So again, we like that opportunity to hear from you. If you've heard from vendors or vendors that said, I'm not aware of this, or I'm missing out on opportunities here, please feel free to forward that to me, because we're looking at how do we make sure we are trying to reach audiences to increase awareness and increase access so that those opportunities can be realized. So that's the part that we're doing now, to look at how do we improve moving forward. And I'll do one last plug. We are working right now on the county purchasing forecast, and that's our 24-month summary of what we plan to buy. We update it every 6 months. So our next posting deadline is January 1st. So we plan to post it by at the latest, the early part of the week of Christmas, if not by next week. But that's important because vendors can find out what we plan to purchase and start gathering the information and details and tracking those so that they're ready to take those opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you both, Director Lockett and Director Nemetzel. We appreciate the update. Thank you all for your engagement, participation. We'll get a gear update by email from Julia. Thank you, Julia.
Just one quick announcement, the parking vouchers, I believe, are on the table, probably by that water pitcher. To scan, you know, the new parking with scanning and license plate, et cetera, but I believe that's a voucher, so. Yeah,
You gotta scan it with your phone before you leave.
and plug in your license plate information.
It's probably already got your license plate from the last time you were here. It's
Okay.
very big brother, sorry. All right, thank you all. With that, we'll get a date out for our next meeting. We don't yet have a date on the calendar, so we'll make sure it's me.
Oh, sorry.
Get it. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.